And what we'll do is we'll kick off with 2 or 3 minutes each. Sorry, I should say I'm John Lehal. I'm a member of the regional executive in the east of England, and I'm an activist in Sikhs for Labour. Shall I just quickly ask our panel to quickly introduce themselves, Lara?
Do I need the microphone? I think this is on anyway. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Lara. I'm a councillor in the London Borough of Hounslow, and I might be the first and only Brazilian councillor. Don't quote me on that because the data is really poor, and that's something that I will talk about as well. But as far as I know, I'm the first and only Brazilian councillor representing over 250,000 Brazilians in the UK. And my whole thing is about representation of migrant communities. So I'm the co-founder of Migrants for Labour, which is a group bringing together migrant activists in the Labour Party. We're trying to encourage more people to join the Labour Party, vote for the Labour Party, and once we're in, stand as elected representatives ourselves. I'm also the co-founder of the Our Home, Our Vote campaign, which is something that I put on your tables as well, which is a campaign asking for voting rights for migrant communities, because unfortunately there are many people who don't have any right to vote in the UK. So if they can't vote, they can't make their voices heard, and we're going to continue having some pretty bad immigration policies in the UK.
Thank you, Lara. Fatima.
Hi, good morning. My name is Fatima Kamara. I am the BAME lead for Runnymede and Weybridge. I'm also an NHS management executive, and I'm happy to be here to meet and share with all of you. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. First of all, thank you very much to Cllr for putting on this fantastic calendar of events over the conference. Every year I think it gets bigger and more exciting, so I'm certainly looking forward to it. So yes, as John said, my name is Praful. My professional career, I'm an entrepreneur, and because of that I was appointed to Keir Starmer's Council of Skills Advisors last year, so I helped the party in how we design policy to get young people ready for the future of work. I'm also a councillor in the London Borough of Islington and a member of Labour Friends Review too.
Hi, good morning everyone, and thank you Ibrahim, and thank you all of you to come over there this morning. My name is Shahid Naheem. I'm a secretary of a South and West CLP and also secretary of a South and Labour Campaign Forum. Recently I'm elected on a National Policy Forum from East of England, and I'm also representing Pakistanis for Labour. My other colleague, you might saw the name Mushtaq Lishar, he was supposed to come, but he ended up somewhere, he couldn't come, so I'm also representing him as well. Third word solidarity.
Great, well, thank you. So a nice cross-section of some of the Friends groups. Do come in. I realised that this is my 30th Labour conference. Well, 30th year of coming to Labour conference. I just joined before the 92 election, and we know how things are in the Labour Party. Once you've gone to one thing, before you know it, you've got to be roped in and you're at conference and everything else. And the reason why I kind of thought I'd mention that is because at that point, in coming to my first conference, we'd lost 4 general elections in a row. And we asked ourselves if we'd ever win again. And, there's lots of parallels with where we are today. We've also lost 4 general elections in a row. And the task that we had in hand then is no different to the task that we have in hand today. It feels pretty insurmountable, doesn't it? A 10% swing that we need to take. We need to take 123 seats to go to form a Labour government. And it feels like it's a high mountain, it's got a high bar, a tough mountain to climb. Well, in 1997, we actually managed to make 147 gains in that landslide victory. And I'm convinced if we did it then, we can do it again. And the secret to that will be to make sure that we're all working together across all communities, across all parts of the country. And in order to do that, we need as many people to be part of that campaign, not just as the foot soldiers on the ground fighting that ground war, not just the people who are in the staff team, not just our candidates, but importantly, the people who are developing the policies. For me, I think as a party, there are kind of 3 things that we have to do. We have to provide credible leadership and shows that we're a government in waiting. And I think particularly we're going to see that this week, but even up to now, we see it. We see it with Keir, with Wes, with Bridget. We've got that bench strength, if you like, and we've got a credible team that people look at and think these people have got the answers and they can do the job in hand of leading government. I think we also need to forensically expose the Tories and their shortcomings. And anybody who watched Rachel Reeves just on Friday, where she talked about Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng last throw of the dice, like like gamblers putting the house on the last roll of the dice. You can see that every day that's what we are doing, and that's what we want is our front bench to every day be waking up and thinking, how do we attack the Tories and expose the deceit and the lies? And then also we need to make sure that we're developing bold policies that appeal to the electorate. And I think on that, that's where we really want to start seeing that work. That's where the work of the National Policy Forum, things like the Skills Commission, and that's where we as members need to come together and start feeding in around that. I'm always very interested in the most marginalised and minoritized communities and thinking about the impact that government policy has on them. And if I think to myself, you've had a devastating impact under the Tories for many of those people. It started with austerity. And if you think of things like the educational maintenance allowance, that was a lifeline for young people from marginalised backgrounds that meant that they could get to school, they could get to college, they could buy the books, they had access to technology. Just slashed, Sure Start just slashed. We've got waiting lists of 6 million in the NHS at the moment. That doesn't happen by accident. That's a political choice that the Tories made under the austerity. And so that has really inflicted great misery on many of our communities. We then had Brexit in 2016. And if you think about how that's had a devastating impact in overseas foreign investment that's been pulled away, people have left the UK, we made them feel that they were not wanted in this country. And again, that has had a devastating knock-on impact. The Office of Budget Reform has said that that's a 4% knockback on our GDP as an economy. And that is the price that we all in our communities are paying. And then you've had COVID, 150,000 people sadly lost their lives. But let's remember that COVID disproportionately impacted people from ethnic minority backgrounds. The NHS and the government failed to provide adequate PPE equipment. If you think of those people who didn't have access to statutory sick pay, they were forced to go into work. That's what has meant and resulted in many ethnic minority communities, marginalised communities being so badly impacted. So you've had A, B, C, and now D. Well, unfortunately, it's cost of living, but I call it debt because that's what was being. Now most families are going to have to experience with the weekly shop going up, fuel bills going up, and 7 interest rate increases in a row, which means that mortgage payments and rents are going to go up. All these things are having a devastating impact, and that's why communities are in uproar. And our job as a party has to be in touch, but to understand, interpret, and feed into the party what those policies need to look like so that people have access to childcare where they need it, public services where they need it, that we're reforming the broken labour market. All these things are measures that we need to be taking the lead on. And taken together, we'll be able to move forward and put those bold policies to the electorate at the next election and hopefully go on to win. Okay. Lara, over to you.
Okay. So thank you, John. And of course, many of the policies of this Conservative government negatively affect migrants. We've got a hostile environment that has been going on for years now. We've got refugees being turned away when they need us the most. We've got Home Office making profit out of visa applications, out of British citizenship applications, something which I had to pay for. But generally, we don't need to go into detail on this, but we all know, many of us are first or second generation migrants around here. We know the cost of the hostile environment. And like myself, I've become a British citizen now, and I'm someone who, I'm from Brazil, but I also have an Italian passport. So I had settled status until last year, and about 6 million people applied for the EU settlement scheme. Many of them, after a year of having settled status, can go on to apply for British citizenship. So they're going to be able to vote in general elections as well. So when I've been out on the doorstep with Migrants for Labour, we're encouraging people to at least register to vote, thinking that as EU citizens they can at least vote in local elections. But more and more we find that they can also vote in general elections. And of course they want to know what Labour has to offer them. So we have to make policies that are appealing to the migrant community as well. I know that sometimes we are a bit afraid of focusing on the issue of migration because of what voters might think, but in reality the concern about immigration is falling after Brexit. One of the campaigns that I work on, for example, on residence-based voting rights, which is to give every resident the right to vote in at least local elections, no matter where they're from, has a lot of public appeal. Our polling showed that 63% of people agree with us that everyone should have the right to vote. And I think that's something that us as a labour movement have to be bold about it, but just also believe the data that we're seeing, that people are wanting more progressive legislation, because the legislation that we're seeing on immigration is not only affecting migrant communities, but it's also affecting landlords who are now having to ask a ton of paperwork out of their possible tenants, employers as well, especially affecting SME business as well. So generally, my work has been a lot to just encourage people to register to vote and, of course, vote Labour, because we know that a Labour government will be providing better immigration policies for my community, and we desperately need it, because we can't afford to continue living under this hostile environment where people are being sent to detention centres indefinitely, where they're being turned away when they need the most, when they're now being sent away to Rwanda, a country where we actually take refugees from. So we can't keep doing this to people who are here building our country. Many of us, again, like Ibrahim, have so much to contribute to our country, but we keep having more and more policies that are turning people away. So at the year ending June 2021, we had 9.6 million people born outside of the UK, in the UK. And despite making up to 14% of the population, 2016 Electoral Commission report found that 53% of EU migrants registered to vote, 63% of Commonwealth citizens registered to vote, in comparison to 86% of British and Irish citizens. But that number doesn't even count the 1.5 million people that don't even have the right to vote because of the nationality that they're from, such as from Brazil, if they don't have another EU nationality, the US, Japan, it doesn't matter where. They're here, they're paying taxes, they're living, they're contributing to our services, they're using the services, so why shouldn't they have the right to vote? And as a councillor, I want to be able to represent everyone, and I want them to have that right to vote, and I want them to be able to stand for their community and be able to talk about the issues that matter to them. So that's all that I've been campaigning for the legislation to change on that. But meanwhile, I will be campaigning, I'll be on the ground, I'll be on the doorstep asking people to register to vote, because one, it improves their credit score, and that's a line that I really like using, but also it just improves their right to vote and makes them be counted and makes them participate in democracy. And we've been going now, before the local elections, we went to 14 places, 14 towns that were having local elections. We brought people that had different language skills to organize amongst the Romanian community, the Portuguese-speaking community, because there are many of us, and we can't forget us. Labour can't forget us. We are voters. More and more of us are gaining the right to vote in general elections as well. So we've got to be ready to present the policies that we as migrants want to see as well.
Great, thank you very much. Could I just ask a quick question of you, which is great that I know that you went to 14 places because I follow you on Twitter. What about if one of our members here has a large migrant community in a particular part of their town or constituency, what can they practically be doing now to go out and get those people registered?
Yeah, so we will be preparing some multi-language voting rights leaflets that you can carry with you in your normal canvassing session, for example. And one thing that I do in my own practice as a councillor, during the elections and now going forward, is that I don't just knock on the doors that are on the electoral register. I knock on every door, because even if they don't have the right to vote, doesn't mean that they don't have casework, doesn't mean that they don't need me as a councillor. So first thing is just that, knocking on every door and having that information about who can and cannot vote. And unfortunately, the Elections Act, which passed last year, has made voting eligibility even more complicated. Which now we're going to have to know, if it's an EU citizen, we're going to need to know the date that they entered the UK, and if the country that they're from has a bilateral voting rights agreement with the UK. That's only Poland, Luxembourg, Portugal, and Spain. So again, this is so complicated. It's becoming more and more complicated for us to know who has or doesn't have the right to vote. But it's our duty to know that and tell our residents who can and cannot vote, and still talk to all of them. And also invite Migrants for Labour for voter registration drives, where we can bring people from different nationalities with different language skills. But often you have that in your own CLPs, you have that in your own group. So just organize. You will know as well like where shops are, where lots of people go from different nationalities. Just go and talk to them. That's what I've been doing. And yeah, don't forget that they are there.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. Fatima, do you want to share your thoughts on winning for Labour?
Thank you, Lara. I think that is so pertinent. I think that in terms of winning for Labour, what we need to understand is that we need to get people involved. We need to engage and be very relatable to people. And as much as maybe we all come from various areas, and our demographics might be quite different, but there are quite similarities that we could actually enhance and put together to be able to reach out to people. I think there's something about, especially when you go canvassing and talking to people, we have this sheet where we, like Lara said, you check and you make sure that they're registered. If they're not registered, you kind of think, oh, well, why do I need to bother? I think we need to reach out across the board. We need to reach out across the spectrum. We need to start from the youth right up to the seniors. There's nothing about, oh, they're only 16 and they're only 17. I think when you start so early, they become so passionate. They know their rights. They know what they want to represent. Nowadays, you go out and you talk to youth, they're like, I'm not interested. I can't see myself. They don't speak on my behalf. So I think there's no such thing as a hard-to-reach group. There is how we actually relate to them and make things more simplified in terms of what we're saying. I think in politics, and obviously I'm talking as a clinician from health, we tend to use a lot of buzzwords. Oh, it's a CLP. What does that mean? Oh, I'm the this. What does that mean? I'm a counsellor. What does that mean? So we need to make sure our message is unique, it's simple, it's clear, it's relatable for people to understand as a party what we stand for, what we're offering, and how they can become engaged and involved within the party. I think this time it's Labour's time to win, and we must harness and do everything that we can, and not say, well, we can't speak to these people, they don't understand our languages, we can't relate to this business owner. Everyone, it's like a cogwheel, we all have a part to play, from inception of youth right through to the business owner, right to the BAME community, right through to the homeless, because they have a voice. Sometimes, life hits people and they're literally trying to focus on what they think might be important to them, and not realizing that this is their opportunity and what they can do and how they can use their vote and their voice to make the difference that we all need to see. We keep talking about, the Tories for the past 12 years. We can talk about it the whole day. Or what are we doing in terms of locally, which also can impact nationally in terms of making us relevant, but also giving us that message, that clear message. This is what we stand for. This is how we can support you. This is how you can join our party. And if you're a business owner with everything else going on around you, if you're starting a business, or if you think you are in an ethnic minority that you don't feel represented where you are, you have a voice, you have a say, you can take action. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Praful.
Yeah, this topic about bringing diverse communities together is something that's frankly very close to my heart. The Labour Party is a historic party of anti-racism. To my family, when they came here to this country, when they used to walk down the street and people used to say the P word to them, they worked in the NHS and their colleagues showed them solidarity, and when they had trouble at work, the Labour Party members that they knew as friends and family were there to support them. So, we have a fantastic track record that we can be proud of, and it's a big part of why we have so much support from such a diverse range of communities across the country. And look, diversity, bringing diverse communities together, it's not just a buzzword or jargon, it really means something. It's fulfilling our moral mission to deliver equality, which is crucially important, but it's also smart politics. The fact is, if you have more diverse voices in a room, if you are representing more diverse communities, you have more perspectives, you'll make better decisions, and actually we're more likely to deliver the society that we want to see that's fairer and more just. So it's crucially important that we deliver on the promise of bringing diverse communities together. What I would say is just bring up some challenges from my perspective and that I think the party faces. And look, as I mentioned at the outset, I'm a member of Labour Friends of India, and look, the Indian community's support of the Labour Party has been declining, and that is well documented. And I think as a party, we have to see that a little bit as the canary in the coal mine, because the Indian community, along with many other South Asian communities, have been stalwarts in supporting the party. And I would just make a few comments that I think we should think about. Firstly, we should attempt as much as possible to avoid the trap of divisive community politics and focus instead on community aspirations. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I mean that, look, there is always an easy tendency to play into the divisions that exist between people. But the reality is that there are other far more aggressive characters and actors in the system. And you only need to look at what's happening in Leicester right now that are willing to exploit divisions between communities and find wedges that will separate people rather than bring them together. And by the way, the Conservatives are more than capable of doing that too, which we saw in Harrow quite recently. And actually, if you go back to when my parents joined the Labour Party, the South Asian communities have supported Labour through decades of challenges in South Asia because the Labour Party stood genuinely for fulfilling the aspirations of those communities. A focus on jobs, on equality, on public services. And so I think what's really important if we want to keep our coalition together of diverse communities is that we focus on the aspirations of those communities. Where do they want it? We don't have to agree on absolutely everything. And the Labour Party should always stand up against abuses of human rights around the world. But at the end of the day, if we are focused on jobs, public services, the economy, quality of life, these are the things that really matter. As a skills advisor, I can tell you that when I engage with South Asian communities, which often have massive aspirations for their children in terms of how going to university or getting highly skilled and getting a highly paid job, they are some of the most engaged people that I deal with and encounter. So that's something that we should be taking away. Focus on community aspirations. That's actually where there's so much overlapping, priorities between communities. Another thing that I would talk about is, the perennial issue of representation. Look, Javid, Sunak, Zahawi, Quartek, that's the last 4 chancellors, and they're all blue. Now I know, as Lara quite rightly said, the Tory party hasn't changed. They are the party of the hostile environment. They have absolutely no interest in equality. And we saw that in their maxi budget last week, which is an absolute disgrace. But the reality is that the narrative in the media, which is now developing, is that they are fulfilling aspirations of diverse communities. Look at their front bench. And we have to look at that as a party. I know John has been doing fantastic work in the east of England, developing a programme to develop ethnic minority talent. Myself in Islington, we launched a BAME leadership programme, and that shifted the composition of the council by 10%. What the Tories did is they were ruthless at removing barriers to ethnic minority representation, and we actually have to go that extra step and do the same thing. And then lastly, I think a final comment I would make just on bringing diverse communities together is, look, there will always be those that seek to divide us. There will always be a chorus of cynics that will look for ways to separate people. And one of the challenges we've had in the last few years, especially around Brexit and around immigration, is trying to find ways of pitting people against each other. We have to shift the narrative towards seeing the diversity of Britain as a strategic competitive advantage for this country. Every community is a wealth of knowledge, of opportunity, of connection around the world, whether it's Brazilian, Pakistani, Indian, or elsewhere. And we have to start talking about immigration and diverse communities in those terms so that we're on the front foot and we're not always defending and afraid of talking about the fact that we are proud of representing people from every community, every origin. And that's what I'd say as an introduction.
Great, thank you very much. Finally, Shahid.
Thank you very much. As Praful rightly mentioned about the community, Labour has a long history of championing the rights of the diverse community across our country, and the Labour government can bring together these diverse community to ensure their voices are heard. And Labour friends of groups like Labour Friend of India and Pakistani for Labours are the forums for members with common interest to represent community, professions and policy areas. They play multifaceted roles in our movement as campaign groups, community network, professional network and support network. They provide the Labour Party with a deep well of knowledge and create spaces for the community. And Pakistani Labour is a friend group of a Labour Party which promotes shared values of Labour Party and Pakistani community. And Pakistani for Labour seek to promote British Pakistani engagement with the Labour Party and in political process based on our shared values of social justice, inclusivity, equality, diversity, and we have been campaigning to increase the public representation of the Labour Party at all level, and it's encouraging Labour Pakistanis for Labour encouraging Pakistanis to join and participate in Labour Party. We campaign to increase electoral support for the Labour Party amongst Pakistanis, and we support and promote Pakistani representation within the Labour Party at local, regional, and national level. So this is also another way that the way we can involve more community, as other participants described earlier. The inclusivity is also very important, this is also a key role, and I think so. The ethnic minority, they are playing the role, and we will keep continue to make sure that in the coming election, Labour Party is in the number 10. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.